Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower of Author Magazine, and we're here at Third Place Books in Lake Forest Park with Bharti Kirchner, author of Tulip Season. Bharti, welcome to Author Magazine.
Thank you, Bill, for having me.
So Bharti, the first time I remember seeing you was probably, it's about 15 years ago, and I was at my first writers conference, and you were up on stage with a bunch of other writers talking about a cookbook.
Oh.
Or one of your cookbooks, or writing cookbooks.
Sure.
But here we are talking about Tulip Season, which is not a cookbook.
No, and
It's a mystery.
in between, I have gone through many transformations. I wrote cookbooks first, and then I started writing regular novels. Those are mostly mainstream literary novels, commercial literary novels. And then after I have done 4 of those novels, my 5th one, which is this one, it became a mystery. Now, I was not planning on writing a mystery. I thought I was writing a regular novel, but there was a mystery element, and that element started to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and kind of took over and so it became a mystery.
But you also wrote for periodicals and like the Seattle Times and magazines. And that was an evolution of the cookbook writing?
Yes, actually, when I first started writing, very first things I did was write for some of the food and cooking magazines, and also running magazines, because I used to be a runner. So these kind of, eventually that led me to writing of other things, but I got started on those 2 things. And interesting things happen is that if you get published in, say, national magazines, say Cooking Magazine or Running Magazine, editors, agents, they read those things. Actually, they read more than we realize. And when I submitted my cookbook proposal, actually the editor has already seen one of my articles in one of the cooking magazines, and that really helped.
But this writing eventually leads to fiction writing, which but very different approach to writing. And so talk about that step.
Okay, I always read a lot, and I mostly read fiction. And so after I had done 4 cookbooks and many, many food articles, I said, well, I have done enough for this area. I really want to do now what I have always wanted to do. But one doesn't just write fiction just like that. So I took a lot of classes, workshops, and just started writing. And I wrote the first chapter of my first novel and showed it to some writer friends. And they said, what happens? This is a good chapter. What happens after that? And I really didn't know, because that was all I knew, is the first chapter. So I said, okay, then I have to start writing now. And I did. And I kept growing. So my writing process is that with fiction, I don't outline. I don't really know what this whole story is. I just start with a character in a certain situation, in a certain place, and I start from that, and I get the rest as I write.
Right, so you start with just one thing that interests you.
Exactly.
Hemingway used to say the one true sentence he would begin with, right? So you have a true character, a true setting.
Sometimes I get the first sentence. That doesn't always happen, but with my second novel it happened, and it's called Sharmila's Book is the title, and that sentence was, I can't believe I agreed to an arranged marriage. So I said, who is speaking that and why is she saying that? But I started from that, and I did find a story.
I have a number of Indian friends, and I've heard from them that they feel the overall Indian culture is still a little conservative compared to, the Western or American culture, certainly.
That's right.
And that can be rich. I sometimes find conservatism, cultural conservatism, very useful for fiction.
Yes.
Because there's so much you're working against, freedom-wise, right?
That's right. A lot of conflicts, a lot to write about, a lot to explain why a person does what they do.
So are you still find yourself interested in that sort of, I don't like to say clash of cultures, but that intersection of the West and...
Yes, I do, because even though there's globalization and there's so much mixing of culture, there's still so many things you don't understand about each other. And people are born and raised in a certain way. Then they come to another culture. There's always a big adjustment to make, and it ends up being very enriching. Actually, you really learn a lot, and you're a bigger person for that. But these adjustments are not always easy.
You know, it seems to me, though, that the job of the fiction writer is always a discipline of empathy, that you're forever having to put yourself in someone's shoes who aren't yours, even if it's not your protagonist, and the whole expectation of the mixture of cultures is empathy, isn't it?
Yes.
To understand that which doesn't look or behave like you.
Exactly, and that is very true. And incidentally, in Tulip season, I have a sentence in the book. It actually comes from the gardening column of Mitra, who is the main character. A weed is nothing but a flower in disguise. And actually, that is speaking to the fact that even a villain or a potential suspect has other deep human qualities that need to be looked at.
So when you started writing fiction, what was your first and biggest surprise or surprising challenge that you encountered in trying to write a novel-length piece of fiction?
I would say it was both plot and the character, how to get to know the character and how
they fit in the plot.
How to fit in the plot too.
Yeah.
Now, plotting surprisingly came rather easily for me. For some reason, as I wrote, I just found the story and the plot. And now, sometimes I had to make some adjustment. Maybe that was not the right path to go. Maybe something else. But overall, that was not a problem. But the character, I found until I finished the first draft, I didn't really know the character that well. Only after I finished the first draft, then I could go back and I could deepen the character. And oftentimes I found the character through unusual means. For example, I may have a couple of side characters talking about the main character, and I found out something about her that I didn't expect.
Interesting. So they told you.
They told me, yes.
So what is it you learned as a writer in Tulip season that you're going to take to your next book, your next novel?
You know, it's very interesting because I have never written a mystery before, and so this I learned.
Did you like doing it?
Actually, it was very difficult. It's not. People think writing a mystery is very easy. It's not. It really isn't, and especially because there are so many mysteries being published. So much has already been done that unless you come up with something new and fresh and exciting, it's not going to go.
Right.
So that's really the first challenge of doing that. What I learned from mystery writing is that mysteries, you have to have a very fast pace. People are not going to, mystery readers read a lot, and they know a lot about crime and criminal acts, behaviors. They know a lot. So you have to have something interesting going all the time and lots of action.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge, but once having done that, I know if I go back and write a regular fiction, the pace would be better.
Last question. Finish the sentence for me. If writing has taught me anything, it has taught me what?
It's taught me to be observant. It taught me to look at people, life, situations, and things much more accurately, much more closely than I was doing before. Before, I was half asleep. As a writer, I have to be on 24 hours. I'm a writer 24 hours. That's my fate.